Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Post-Match Raw here on Anfield Index Pro, the first post-match Raw of the official sort of restart of the season post-World Cup. As Liverpool took on Aston Villa and produced a 3-1 win here on Boxing Day, I'm delighted to welcome back with me Karl Matchett and Jim Boardman to take in this game, give us their thoughts on it. So first and foremost, guys, I'll go to you first, Karl. What were your sort of overarching thoughts on that game? First of all, Premier League football thrust back into our eyes only sort of a mere few days after the World Cup had wrapped up, and the Reds, the chaotic Reds at times, back in full view. What was your sort of view on the game?
Well, first of all, Merry Christmas to you, Harry.
Absolutely.
A good one, and Jim, and all the lovely listeners as well, obviously. I wasn't ready for it, I'll be honest with you. I was not ready for this. I consumed, let's say, too much of the action during November and December, and I didn't get remotely excited about any of the parts of the Man City game, so I really wasn't ready for today, and especially that was like basically 4 games back to back for me by the time today is finished. So I was fearing the worst in terms of my concentration and willingness to get sucked into, all the stress and anxiety and rage that comes with watching every Liverpool game this season anyway. As it turns out, within 10 minutes, I'd kind of forgotten all of that, and I was ready to start screaming and throwing things again anyway. So the match itself irritated me a bit, enthralled me a bit, entertained me quite a lot. Ultimately, I'm marginally happier than I was to start the day, so I guess that's a net positive as well as the 3 points. And lots and lots of chaos, which I'm going to enjoy going over. I suppose biggest takeaway, just by the fact, we're back underway and things are up and running again, is we have actually closed the gap to the top 4 by 2 points today. So, yay.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you probably will not be alone here tonight, Karl. I think both in terms of the listeners and also probably myself and Jim as well, in terms of being ready, prepared mentally, emotionally, spiritually for the return of Premier League football. And for watching the Reds as well. I think, some of those emotions that you talked about there are things that we've probably all gone through today. And I'd already spoken with Jim ahead of the pod. Just to talk to all the listeners as well, only right, to be honest, some spirits have been consumed. So there may be a little bit of a bit more heightened emotion than general. Jim, was it a similar experience for you, sort of watching the Reds back in action again in terms of Premier League football?
It is, yeah, because you sort of... It's been just a weird month, hasn't it? December's been the weirdest of months with all the sort of Christmas ads and World Cup stuff in between it, and now we've got kind of football that's not sort of plagued by some Italian guy. No, Swiss guy, I can't remember. Mr. Infantino. What is he? He doesn't even know what's that.
Solbay's best friend, yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, him. What a man. So it's just been strange to go back to the usual kind of dodginess of the usual sort of stuff with the Premier League. But no, same again. Merry Christmas, incidentally, to everybody listening, and I hope it is merry. And yeah, once it got going, it was kind of muscle memory came back, and you remembered all the things that you love and hate about football. And I think, Villa is a club that they've sort of done us some damage in ways over the sort of last decade or so. I mean, to the point where we even bought Christian Benteke to stop him scoring against us. Unfortunately, not to get him scoring for us, but still, it did clear that one problem up. So I was kind of thinking this could go any way, this game. It's a little bit worrying, but at the end of it, looking back with the good old gift of hindsight, I'm thinking, did I need to worry? Maybe, but not quite as much as I did. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I think this is a great way to kick off part 2 of the season. And I didn't count the Man City game the other day as a real game. The way they didn't count the Community Shield as a real game. And I think I'm hoping it's kind of reversal of fortunes that we hammered them in the Community Shield and then had a really bad part 1 of the season. They beat us in the Carabao Cup. Let's hope it's not a really bad season from here on in, which we do the opposite to what we kind of did before. So yeah, we've got off to a good start, and you can't ask for more than that. 3 points, a win away from home. Hopefully, what players we've got left are unscathed, and yeah, it's here. It's the season now finally begins.
Yeah, what players we have left is probably sort of a theme that's going to come up again, and I think. Something else we were discussing as well was, at this time of year, as you mentioned, sort of it's slightly weird to have this sort of football thrust back into our lives only so sort of shortly after the World Cup had finished, and a sort of a strange World Cup at that as well. And also sort of watching games like this, perhaps with family members that you don't always watch games with as well. So you sometimes get different commentary, backseat commentary that you would usually sort of have expected as well. So it's only adds to the flavour of these games. But just to start off with the lineups, and Karl, I'll come to you just with the Liverpool lineup for this game. I know you did the AI scouted for it, but Jim mentioned there some players being absent. Of course, many players for many teams still coming back from those World Cup hangovers, some players being rested and things like that. But the lineup for Liverpool was as follows: sort of the old faithful Alisson, Becker in goal, Robertson left back, Van Dijk, Matchett as a centre back pairing, Trent, Alexander-Arnold, obviously sort of the right back who was far too dangerous to be trusted to start a game for England in the World Cup, restored to a starting place for Liverpool. Hendo, Fabinho, and Thiago in midfield. Salah, Nunez, and Oxlade-Chamberlain on the left, in the absence of obviously Jota and Diaz at the moment for Liverpool. What were your thoughts on that lineup? Any real surprises there? I'm sure there perhaps weren't too many. And sort of, what did you make of the way in which Klopp lined the team up?
No surprises, really. I think the only debate we really had was whether or not Trent was going to be able to play. Obviously, he was ill for the friendly warm-up against Man City. It was pretty much as expected. Otherwise, Elliott could have started, or Carvalho could have started, or whatever. But I think it was always likely we would go with the most senior side for this one, because it really left ourselves a lot of margin for error now, have we? So I think it was everybody who's fit and senior is going to play this game, basically. And I think it was probably made a little bit easier for that decision in terms of, let's say, Kanate wasn't available. That could have been a decision. Obviously, Firmino going out injured only a week ago now. Otherwise, that probably would have been a decision of whether to play Nunez from the left or whatever. But overall, I wasn't really surprised by any aspect of it. I was definitely intrigued about a couple of players in particular, namely Trent and Fabinho, because obviously they haven't had the break, but they also haven't had the games. So it's a little bit of, would they be rusty? Would they be lacking a bit of sharpness, or would they be able to just slot back in and actually be a bit more energized? Because they've been training, they just haven't been used on a match day as such. So it was definitely interesting for me to watch them and their start to the match for sure. But otherwise, pretty much as expected.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Yeah, and we'll come on to talk about sort of those players and how they perform from the start. I think obviously sort of Trent heavily involved early on as well. But yeah, looking at the bench, Carvalho, Phillips, Tsimikas, Kelleher, Doak, Bajcetic, Gomez and Elliott and Keita. Not a huge number of game-changing options there, as we sort of saw throughout the game, actually, in terms of sort of the changes that Klopp actually ended up making in the game, into sort of how he tried to redress the balance as the game sort of perhaps at times swung away from us a little bit. But yeah, we'll get onto that as well. And Jim, in terms of the way in which Villa lined up, Olsen in goal, the forever youthful Ashley Young, Konsa, Tyrone Mings, Luca Digne, McGinn, Luiz, Camara, Buendia, Bailey and Watkins. As Karl has mentioned, sort of Villa in the past having a team that, of course, does an awful lot of headaches. On the bench, just looking at their options as well. Perhaps actually a little bit stronger than Liverpool, to be honest, actually on the day. Coutinho, Dodonka, Danny Ings, Marshall, Cash, Chambers, Bednarak, Young and Archer. So there were some options there. Of course, a new manager that we've not faced as Aston Villa coach in Unai Emery as well. Did have the potential to be quite a tricky fixture. What did you make of the way in which they lined up? Were there any sort of standouts for you?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing was the goalkeeper, because there was sort of talk that maybe they'd have that guy in goal. He sort of you might have noticed if you did watch the World Cup. He had a bit of a cameo role in that now and again.
Low profile, wasn't he? I mean,
yeah. Because that's the thing. That's the kind of thing that football has. You can, no matter how much you look at stats and all the rest of it, there's always that sign, that kind of sod's law stat of things that, it just happens that you find yourself up against a goalkeeper who's so high on confidence and everything else that he may just have the best game of his life and just ruin your day. But thankfully he was somewhere else. And I've not heard of the sub goalkeeper to be totally honest, but he didn't have that bad a game. And the other thing is, again, on the bench, I think that was the other thing I was looking for. That again, sort of going away walking definitely down a superstitious path again, is that thing about having players like Coutinho and Ings against you, that that kind of getting one over on their old club feeling that you might get. And luckily they didn't come on until later. And I think you're right in saying how weak we were as a team. I think both of those players would have got on our bench if they were still on our books. I'm not saying they would be regulars in our side, but I think both of them, could have been options for us. So I do feel that was a worry. But Watkins, another worry, but didn't quite put away as many chances as he could have done, even though everyone will be talking about how many chances Nunez didn't put away. And the other noticeable name to me, alongside Tyrone Mings, is the former Blue Nose, Digne. And I don't mean the Blue Nose in the Birmingham sense. I mean the Blue Nose in the Merseyside sense. So, they're all the kind of players who, regardless of skill, there's always that little bit of an extra edge. But yeah, I think it's the same as us, really. I think you're right as well. They did have that little bit more choice off the bench than we did. Maybe that bit more quality off the bench compared to what was on the pitch. But really, when you look at that, we should be beating them, and we did. But did we as well, as convincingly as we could have done, is another matter.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think, thank you for the reminder there. To sort of the Blue Nose as well. Obviously, Everton recording a lovely 2-1 loss earlier in the day.
I believe it was a last-minute loss as well, wasn't it?
I think it was, I think those are the very best. I think it was a 95th minute winner for Wolves, which is only fair,
And then apologies to any fans for Liverpool who are living on Merseyside and you've had to cope with Everton fans today, but they'll calm down eventually.
Exactly, yeah. There's as you mentioned, spirits have been consumed over the past few days. Hopefully there'll be a lull over the next few days, and they'll be able to dwell on that a little bit longer. I'm sure Frank will as well. But just to start the game off, obviously. Was a lively start. Sort of on 2 minutes, Watkins sort of had a good run through sort of the defence, and actually a scuffed shot towards goal. It's sort of easily caught. It says here by Alisson. I think that will become a little bit of a theme, not just for Watkins, but for numerous Villa players who perhaps got in on goal, and maybe we were sort of expecting the worst, but actually sort of scuffed finishes, sort of not the cleanest of strikes, things like that. And Alisson doing his usual sort of calmness personified, resulted in sort of a lack of any actual real chances against us. Then sort of on 3 minutes, Liverpool broke the other way through Robertson, who I thought was very strong today again. Sort of low fizz crosses into into the penalty area around Nunez. Mings, I think actually lots of shouts behind me that there was a foul by Nunez on Mings. Obviously, that was nonsense. I think Mings just sort of tripped himself up and actually collided with his goalkeeper on that occasion. Was down for a little bit as well. Chambers sort of threatened to come on, but Mings, obviously, sort of the warrior that he is at times, continued strongly in the game, if not defensively. And in 5 minutes, we opened the scoring. And I mean, I have to say, I'm not sure what noises were made on either of your ends, but this for me, especially in the surroundings of family members who are not Liverpool supporters by any stretch of the imagination, I was shouting from the rooftops about Trent's ball here. Got the ball back in play through sort of Robbo's corner. It wasn't cleared that well, and Trent picked it up around about the 18-yard box. A lovely outside the right foot pass, I think it was, straight into the path of Robertson, who crossed it first time to Salah for a tap-in. A gorgeous goal, such incision in that goal as well. And exactly the sort of start that you probably want from a team that's maybe perhaps lacking a little bit of confidence of late. Karl, I'll come to you with that. What did you make of that goal?
I think we saw more in this opening 5 minutes or so of the fixture than we will probably see in quite a lot of other teams' entire 90 minutes, to be perfectly honest. It was kind of give us a sense of what was to come for the rest of the day, to be honest, didn't it? Because it was very, very open. It was not really from either side, you could say, tight enough defensively in those opening few minutes. You mentioned the run that they had going through very, very early on. Sort of gave me the feeling, is it going to be one of those days? I thought we were going to be like a bit more energetic and a bit more up for it. But it was the goal itself great. You know, after what should have probably been a second-minute lead for us, and I'm not really sure still after watching it 16 times why Darwin does not clip it home at the near post there. And people shouting in my ear, he said Robertson's after the Premier League record. It could have been that one. Now he's going to have to wait. And yes, he did. But 3 minutes, probably not quite as much as we were worried about it at that exact moment. Probably the least Andy Robertson assist I could envisage, to be fair. It was much more of a Salah assist than a Robertson one. Landing off the right channel, first time ball, but brilliant touch. Really, really good vision and obviously weight on the pass from Trent. Mentioned before that I was intrigued to see if he would be a little bit rusty or a little bit heavy touch or anything like that, but straight off the bat I think Trent put 2 ping balls out to the left hand side and then that one outside of the boot over the defence. So that's answered any questions I had about him.
Yeah, I'm sure Southgate is watching that from somewhere, glass of port in hand, resolute in his decision making for the World Cup. Jim, just bringing you in there, Karl mentioned the record. Obviously sort of referring to Robertson's assists record that he broke tonight. The most Premier League assists provided by defenders in the entire Premier League's history. That's 54 assists now for Robbo in just 231 games. Another pleasing record-breaking sort of stat here as well is that he secured that win, or secured that current status as the highest number of assists in the Premier League's history, by surpassing one Leighton Baines as well, who had 53 assists over 420 games as well. So done it in nearly just over half the games that Leighton Baines had done it in. I think it's worth just dwelling on that for a second. I mean, because I think we've watched these fullbacks over the years produce so many wonderful games, competing with each other at times. Him and Trent. And Karl mentioned then maybe not the most classic Andy Robbo assist you're ever going to see in the world, especially the side he produced it from. But just your thoughts there on Robbo and the consistency that he provides to the team at times.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is that just going back to what you said about Trent and kind of sending a message out to Gareth Southgate, who I hope with having a family get together much like yours, and was being barracks from behind him. And I mean, maybe he was in Pizza Hut and he ended up with a brown paper bag over his head. Because not only did Trent put that brilliant ball back in, and he was the man sitting back at the corner, ready to sort of stop any breaks that might come from the corner. that was such a wonderful ball. As you say, Robbo, wrong side of the pitch to where we're used to seeing him, except when he's been taking a corner maybe, and wonderful little assist. And that whole thing was a reminder to Southgate that fullbacks aren't fullbacks the way they were in the 70s anymore. Certainly not with Liverpool, and they can do so much more for you. And I just love the idea that, that Southgate's sitting there thinking, damn, now I know what they're on about. But I know he'll be sitting there thinking, still not really sure what it is they go on about over Trent. Why do we need him? I mean, shouldn't he have stayed back anyway? That could have lost the ball there. I can just imagine him being over worried. And that's the thing. That's the thing about Liverpool. The reason those fullbacks score those goals and get those assists and make such an important change to what we do and have such an impact is because we are an adventurous team, and that's what we love to see. When Liverpool have been adventurous, and at times they were tonight, not the whole game, that's what you love to see. That is what makes it exciting. That is what leads to the goals. That's what gives you stuff to talk about afterwards. That's what so many of these Raw podcasts have been talking about, is the stuff that's being caused by this adventurous team with its adventurous fullbacks. And I just loved it. I just thought that was just what a great way to kind of kick off the season proper for us, or at least this half of it. He did come just after that little scare by Villa, which was, you'd have hoped that would have been like a little reminder that we didn't try to keep reminding ourselves of over the course of the game, but we did. But that straight away just showed, I don't know, it's like I feel like we're going back to the old days again, and that's what I loved most about it. Sort of that sort of the way Trent and Robbo work so well together. I think in the commentary later on, Tilsley was saying he's never known a pair of fullbacks who work so well together. Opposite sides of the pitch, but the way they can find each other, and then that one then can find someone who can score. It's unreal, and yeah, there's a lot to be said. Leighton Baines, just quickly on him. To be fair to him, I mean, I wonder how many assists he would have got if there'd been anyone decent on the other end of them. That's the only thing I can say in his favour. That's something that we've been blessed with for Trent and Robbo, that when they put those balls in, they're assist worthy, that there's someone who's capable of turning it into an assist for them.
If we can just add a couple of extra Everton layers to that Andy Robbo moment. Obviously the guy he didn't put the goal past, but he set up the goal to score past Robin Olsen. He actually had a short loan spell at Everton. That's one of his many clubs, which is probably why you don't know of him, Jim. He only plays for small clubs mostly.
Yeah. And he probably doesn't like to talk about it either, does he?
No. It's an unspeakable moment of his career. The other Liverpool link, let's say, that he was actually the Roma goalkeeper of choice to replace Alisson when we bought him. So a bit of a step down, I'm afraid.
Right, I didn't know that.
I appreciate the effort there, just to really pour the salt into the wound of that goal. And I think, as you mentioned there, Jim, I think Southgate probably somewhere thinking, why produce an outrageous assist when you could just clip that ball long out of play Karl, from a clip ball from Karl Walker, I'm sure, or Trippier.
Rose Ed. You can hear him shouting now.
Rose Ed and reset, exactly. On 7 minutes, we saw Oxlade-Chamberlain find Nunez inside the penalty area. But Nunez was sort of unable to sort of fashion a shot from the chance. Konsa got quite tight to him as well. Buendia produced a great pass over the top for Watkins, which again was an unsettlingly recurring theme throughout the day, to the sort of the Villa players producing those sorts of passes to an always willing runner in Watkins. Hammered a volley straight towards Alisson, but as Alisson tends to do at times, despite the chance actually being offside, makes the save anyway, demoralises the striker hopefully, and just lets them know exactly sort of the calibre of keeper they're dealing with as well. Trent, as I think both of you mentioned, started the game really sharply. Another lovely pass to Ox in the penalty area. Tried to sort of fashion a chance to shoot, but wasn't able to sort of get his feet right in terms of sort of producing the shot and as well. Trent at this stage as well, really sort of drifting into that sort of more central as a playmaker, as we've seen him at times, when he's really produced some of his best football for us as well. Sort of wrapping passes round for Nunez, looking for those sort of curl passes, with the constant runs of Nunez as well. I think Olsen made a good interception on that occasion on 12 minutes. And then on 14 minutes, sort of miscued chance by Bailey, as sort of talked about it. Villa had a number of chances where it looked like perhaps they could make more of the opportunity, but sort of poor touches, maybe slight offsides or miscued chances actually ended up sort of reducing them to being sort of quite unthreatening. A cross came in. Watkins mistimed his jump, failed to get something on that before Bailey ended up scuffing it as well. Looked like a gilt-edged chance, wasn't marked in terms of his run into the box. So I was looking for any of the midfielders to be tracking this man. No one was found as well, unfortunately. McGinn cut inside on 16 minutes from the right. Lovely cross in again for Watkins. Diving header. But again, the contact, not clean, not quite good enough. Comfortably caught by Ali. Hendo on 18 minutes. Decent position on the right wing. Curled across in. Mings cleared that. Otherwise, like it was sort of destined for Nunez as well. Luiz sort of fouled Robertson on 19 minutes. Again, it was a free kick that again didn't really lead to much as well. And then on 21 minutes, Liverpool score, but it doesn't actually count. It has a sort of Trent took a set piece, directed a sort of pretty accurate sort of effort towards Matchett. A lovely header, to be honest, actually sort of glanced across the goal into the corner, but slightly offside in terms of sort of Matchett there. As we all know, very rare for Matchett with his 50p head to make such good contact, so always a regret as well. A couple more chances there. Sort of Trent really sort of orchestrating things early on, looking sharp as you both mentioned, looking to dictate play, looking for the runs of Nunez that were pretty constant at this time as well. And on 28 minutes, Nunez, I've got it here, Nunez is denied in all caps, launched a ball to hit on the counter, forced Conso into a pretty awkward clearance back towards his own goal. And Nunez latched onto it with a volley at Olsen, but again, closed his legs and managed to sort of save the effort as well. So, Jim, just come to you in terms of sort of how Liverpool approached those opening sort of 30 minutes or so. There's quite a few chances we've mentioned there for Liverpool, and a couple of occasional chances for Villa as well. Sort of miscued efforts that will be a recurring theme for us. What did you make of the way in which we started the game? It felt a little bit loose to me at times. Maybe it's the time of year that I was perhaps a little bit more forgiving of the of sort of the outing. There wasn't huge amounts of control, but it was very much entertaining.
Yeah, it was entertaining. I think it's there was no order to it. It was like I'm sure many people have had the same sort of situation at the buffet table over this holiday period where people aren't really going in any kind of order, and you're missing out on the good stuff. But I mean, it was. I mean, in a way, I think they gave us a good few warnings that we need to be careful here, that we need to watch them. And that air shot from Bailey was a let off for us, really. That was a good cross coming in, and I think maybe they'd worked out that this was the way they were going to go at us, because they seemed to be these crosses coming into the box from out wide was their sort of efforts, their sort of action plan, the game plan, if you like, on how they were going to try and get past us, and they did keep trying it, to be fair to them. And we've got a defence that's been a strange defence for us this season, because we've kind of very rarely played the same partnership. And I know these two guys know each other well, but they've not had a lot of time together. And another, if I'm going to be negative about us at that time, there was a worry at the time that I thought, in contrast to the very well-rested Trent, that at times Hendo did look tired and just seemed to be a little bit off the pace. But as the game went on, I started to wonder whether it was just more a case of him sort of conserving his energy and just sort of picking his moments to do his crazy fast running things that he does, and often does well. So it was that sort of thinking that would he have even started if we'd had enough fit players? But he did his best, and I've not really got any complaints about him. I was just more worried about how tired he was. And again, this whole thing about the World Cup at that time of the year just comes back. More and more arguments against it, despite how good everyone thought it was. It's that, and then the other thing about it as well is that we were starting to get that bit of a narrative now. And to be fair, Clive Tilsley, he was commentating on what I was watching, and he's not the worst person. And Andy Townsend wasn't in the on tactics truck mode, so even he wasn't too bad today. But we were just starting to get that sort of agenda that's going on with Nunez, that they're waiting for Nunez to fail and they're loving every minute of it. That kind of thing was just starting to go to me. And I'm thinking, the thing about Darwin is that he tries things when other people would give up on them. They don't all come off, and then people laugh. But you know what? You keep trying those things, and sooner or later they come off. There are times when he should have done better than he did, with chances that he had and so on. But I just love the way that he just keeps going, and he's not put off. And maybe he doesn't understand the Villa song, the Villa fans stealing that shit Andy Carroll chant or not, I don't know. But he doesn't let it bother him and just keeps going. So that to me was my sort of takeaway by this point in the game, was that it was end to end. I mean, that's the cliche, I suppose, but it was end to end. We were letting them come at us as much as we were going at them, and I think it was later on in the game you almost need to sit back, but at this point it was definitely end to end, and I think we were just trying to get that second goal and hopefully put a cushion in place, which, without sort of putting any spoilers in, maybe we did later on.
Yeah, I think Nunez and his efforts and his indifference to some of these chances as well. I'm pretty confident he doesn't have any idea who Andy Carroll is, to be honest. But I'm sure he would welcome attendance at sort of similar raves. Actually, hopefully not as chaotic in the future. But Karl, just to come to you as we sort of end the first half, on 36 minutes, Nunez did dribble into the penalty area. Sort of dummy to pass it back a little bit before cutting inside and firing a shot at Olsen. Did look to confuse him at first, actually, but sort of Konsa got just enough of a sort of an interception on it to take it away from goal and behind for a corner. Again, that's sort of the theme of Darwin's half, sort of trying the unorthodox at times, trying the orthodox at times, making some good runs, sort of excellent runs, actually, I think it's fair to say, making good contact at times, but just things not being as ruthless as you would like to see from him. On 37 minutes, Liverpool doubled their lead. Van Dijk, who was always satisfying to see him score, sort of from a corner, wasn't properly cleared, sort of a Trent delivery, headed by, again, lovely assist by a former Everton man, Digne. Salah kept it alive, sort of drilled it back in, and there is Van Dijk, who volleyed it in. I think it was maybe a slight deflection to the goal eventually, but sort of Van Dijk, who ends up scoring from that sort of acute angle as well. I think it's actually recorded as a Salah assist, and I'm sure he'll be delighted with that as well. On 39 minutes, Thiago sort of chipped a pass over the top for Trent after Nunez sort of controlled it pretty well inside the box. But again, sort of Trent wasn't unable to sort of really clip it back in as well. Bailey, sort of again, who was a willing runner constantly, I think, throughout the game, taken down just outside the penalty area, but wasn't a foul, despite much of the chagrin of the crowd. Again, not much action, I think, really before the end of the first half, apart from sort of 2 minutes into added time in the first half. Pretty good stop by Olsen. Trent tried to set up sort of Nunez for what looked like to be a pretty sure goal. It was through on goal. The striker volleyed the shot with the inside of his foot, but again, Olsen denied him with a smart save, a good save, I'd say, just to bring up the half-time whistle. Karl, what did you make of, again, sort of get your thoughts on that first half display, the second goal from Van Dijk, the way in which we ended it, again, positive in terms of sort of the effort to try and get that third goal, really wrap up the game?
Yeah, I think it was largely positive for Liverpool. I think we were mostly in control for a lot of this period of the game. I think the second goal is definitely very important. I don't know that I would have been overly happy, or Jurgen, in fact, overly happy to be going in at half-time only the one ahead, because Villa started the first half very well. You could expect that they would start the second half very well, very energetically. But I think our off-the-ball work was a little bit better in the second half of the first half as such. I think we were a little bit quicker to close them down in midfield third. We were a little bit better organised in terms of winning those second balls in deeper midfield areas. And I think that a lot of that ability to recapture the ball and recirculate it quite quickly was what enabled us to keep the pressure on in the attacking third of the pitch. So, I mean, again, you've listed like 6 things which involved Darwin Nunez there, and that just sort of highlights how involved he was, how much of an outlet he was for us. Also, the fact that he didn't actually, in that period, contribute directly to any goals as such. But I'm with you on this. I think it's okay. I think, well, Jim, I think, mentioned that, he keeps going back in for it, and he keeps going for the next chance, and he keeps making the runs, which is just impossible to contain. Like, at no point did Villa stop him doing anything that he wanted to tonight. The only thing that stopped Darwin doing stuff was Darwin himself, with what he decided to do at the end. Whether it was, a slightly dragged shot, or the decision to pass instead of shoot, or the decision to not shoot at all and run over the ball to do nothing at all. These are just Darwin Nunez decision-making things. That's, I assume, what most of the work with him on the training ground is going to be about, because his off-the-ball movement is brilliant. His Work rate is obviously very, very good as well. He's got lightning pace. I mean, Ezra Konsa is like a very, very quick centre-back in the Premier League, and he didn't get close to him once. Tyrone Mings, when he crashed into his own goalkeeper, that's the closest he got to Darwin Núñez all game long. He is a real handful, and none of the Villa defence today was able to do anything at all. The one where he ran through and volleyed it basically straight at Olsen, that's again putting sort of Konsa under a bit of pressure. Konsa's attempted clearance sort of skews up into the air. Darwin's then got the pace and the strength to hold him off on the run and get in front of him. It's very, very good. Like another maybe split second, he could have taken a touch before shooting. He maybe could have gone around the keeper with the first touch because there's quite a lot of space behind him if it's even a little bit heavy or something like that. But again, this is all just decision making. It's very difficult to do that in the moment. So hopefully with a little bit more age and experience, that composure and coolness of the mind will come, and he could be a forward who ends up contributing a couple of goals every single game for us with the level of impact that he has in the final third. It's not quite there yet, but it could have been in this game easily. The actual goal itself that Van Dijk did score, not too much to add to it. It was a really good finish. It was again good that we kept the pressure on after the first delivery didn't really come to what we wanted. We kept the pressure on. We reacted quickest to it. We set it up nicely. It was a decent hit. I think it was going in anyway, even without the deflection, but we will take any minor fortune we can get.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin De Vries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think the Núñez discourse is likely to rattle on. I think we've all mentioned watching these games at this time of year, perhaps with sort of a different crowd than we used to. Lots of comments flying my way around Núñez missing these chances and things like that. And as you mentioned, Karl, I think I was sort of reminded of, I'm not even sure which striker I've heard this from at this stage, but sort of the number of times in which I've heard sort of former strikers repeat the importance of the fact that these strikers are making the runs, getting the chances, despite the fact that they're missing some of those chances. That often being sort of the harder skill to actually produce the chance to cause the chaos, to cause the aggravation. That's the sort of the more difficult thing. The actual sort of the ruthlessness will come, and hopefully sort of confidence will help that as well. Jim, just into the start of the second half, I mean, you sort of mentioned the way in which the first half ended sort of positively. I was looking to press home the advantage, score that third goal maybe, and really kill things off. Villa had all the sort of the reason to come out renewed and try and fight their way back into the game. On 47 minutes, it looked like they'd done that. Watkins peeling away to celebrate. Louise made a lovely pass. Again, quite easily through the half of our defence at times, it looked like, for Watkins, who's constantly making those runs. Good back heel from Buendia as well. But it looked like he was actually flagged just offside, actually, as he did actually sort of push the ball past Alisson. You got Kamara sort of firing a ball out, slightly misplaced, sort of forcing Digne into sort of charge behind. Managed to sort of dig out a low cross, but Trent again cleared it quite well. It looked like it was destined for McGinn. Digne again whipping in a free kick on for 51 minutes after Young, sort of the 37-year-old Young, was fouled by Thiago. Again, Thiago sort of the classic foul of sort of completely stunned that he's been pulled up for one. Salah latched onto an effort, sprinted more or less the entire length of the pitch, I think, here actually, so certainly the entire length of Villa's half, but wasn't able to sort of make the best of contacts with his effort. Again, sort of Liverpool looking to counter, looking to get that third goal to kill things. On 53 minutes, Fab had a good effort that went wide, sort of from around 20 yards. Looked to sort of, rather than his sort of lashed finish against City that we're all aware of, looked to try and place it from around 20 yards, went just wide. Pretty good move from Villa on 55. Ended up again with a good save from Alisson holding the ball. Always delightful when he does that to sort of reduce any sort of panic. Thiago on 56 minutes brought the ball down. Sort of lovely cross into Nunez. Again, sort of four Villa defenders immediately sort of converged on him to stop him producing any other chances. Then on 59 minutes, Villa did get their goal back. Sort of McGinn sort of pushed sort of Trent into sort of mishitting a clearance before then finding Luiz in space. Lovely cross into the far post, and Watkins, who had many chances so far, put his header back across the face of goal and into the corner. So Jim, I mean, as I mentioned there, Villa had every reason to come out and try and push for their goal. It was really important to score the next one, and we were hoping to try and kill it off on our side, but Villa and Watkins ended up getting that goal. What was your thoughts on the opening sort of 20 minutes of the second half and that goal?
I think, you kind of know what the team talk's going to be in the Villa dressing room. I mean, it's probably very much along the same lines with a bit less drama as Rafa's one in Istanbul on that wonderful night all those years ago. It's sort of, it's not over yet. We can get into it, get the first goal, and it changes the mood in the stadium. It changes it puts the other side under pressure and all the rest of it. And so for that first 15 minutes, they were trying to score a goal against us. And we, for whatever reason, at least for the first, I would say definitely the first 5 minutes of the half, we kind of came out with, as if our team talk was right, well done lads, you've done the first 45, just don't let anything in, just relax now, we've done the job. And we seemed sluggish just for that, at least for the first 5 minutes. And then by being sluggish for that 5 minutes, it felt as though we'd sort of given them the confidence to keep coming at us. And they were fluffing chances, they were just finding themselves offside. In that whole time you just mentioned, I think there was Fabinho's effort, which he's just getting his sights in, he's getting nearer, the next one will go in. Salah's run, I'm thinking, my God, slow down, you're going to pull a hamstring, but he didn't, obviously, because he's such an amazing player. The speed on him was unreal, and it's just a shame that there was no way you could get something at the end of that run, because that would have been definitely goal of the season if there'd been a goal at the end of it, but sadly there wasn't. And sadly, at the end of this 15-minute spell, it was that goal for Villa, which it just felt inevitable. And you watch games sometimes and you kind of feel that you're just sitting there helpless watching. There's nothing you can do to change it. And sooner or later, it's going to go in. And you just, I think to myself, does Klopp stand there feeling just as helpless and think, there's nothing I can do, nothing I say to these players will work. They will just carry on doing this. And you've got to give Villa credit, though. They just kept plugging away. And Watkins, he found a way to do it. He got in between Trent and Matip, and if anyone was at fault, maybe Matip. But sometimes you just got to give credit that they were creating these chances that up to now they'd fluffed. There's so much for Liverpool to go back to the training ground on this week. So much video footage to look at and to analyse and to see how often we gave them the chances to get in. And we need to do that. We need to analyse it. We need to see what was going wrong. We need to see how to stop other teams doing it to us, because you can guarantee all the other teams will be looking at the same footage, looking what the weaknesses were and looking how to exploit them. Because on another day against another team with decent finishers, we could have been quite a way behind by then. And I think we did come out. I do definitely think that Klopp sent us out to kind of sit back for the second half, just hold on to the 2-0, don't let them get a goal, or maybe only let them get one. And for a good chunk of that half, it felt that way. And I think I wrote down somewhere that, is this a good plan? Sit back, and keep them out as much as you can, sort of conserve your energy, just keep them back, get the 3 points that way. And the only way you know if it's a good plan is in hindsight. So in hindsight, it was a good plan, but I think at the time I wasn't so sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's the first game that we discussed here, certainly on post-match Raw as well, around Liverpool lacking control in this sort of position of the game. Perhaps it's, as we've all discussed at length, maybe the lack of sort of the right midfield personnel to actually control games like this. As you mentioned there, Jim, if the instruction was to sit back to try and defend, we've seen this Liverpool team do that in the past. This incarnation of this Liverpool team, I don't know, it makes me feel a little bit nervous whenever we try and do that.
the word I used was spectators, and I felt like that's what we were. I'd written down the word spectators because I think we were for that, certainly that first quarter of an hour and a half. And I think the thing is, when you sort of take to your place, sit back, let them come at you, what you're hoping then is that you'll catch them on the break.
Exactly.
And to not catch them on the break that often in that spell is maybe the worry more than how well we defended. Because if you do start catching them on the break, they're not quite as brave coming at you, are they? So.
No, exactly. And I think, as you mentioned, there was sort of Salah's chance. I mean, if there had been more of those, perhaps it would have been sort of a little bit more of a sort of a wake up call for Villa to the sort of the danger they faced by coming onto us. But there wasn't, and sort of the frequency of their chances was an issue as well. On 65 minutes, again, sort of Luis sort of hooked a dangerous cross into the penalty area. Looked again, it was going to be sort of destined for Watkins, but Van Dijk sort of stepped forward and cleared the ball. Again, that's a recurring theme, I think, for the rest of the game. Actually, sort of Van Dijk, I thought, was pretty good today in terms of sort of his see ball, head ball, sort of the Dejan tribute act at points in terms of sort of clearing the ball when Villa did look to be a bit more direct. On 67 minutes, we saw some substitutes being made by Klopp, and we spoke about the lack of options perhaps there were on the bench that really changed the game. And in a situation where you're looking to control things a little bit more, perhaps a little bit weird to see the likes of Thiago Alcantara going off the pitch, who again didn't go to the World Cup, but he did leave the pitch, was replaced by Naby Keita, and Oxlade-Chamberlain was replaced by Harvey Elliott on 67 minutes as well. On 69 minutes, there was an effort by Young, who went fairly long. Elliott sort of deflection on a pass provided Alisson sort of time and space to reclaim it. Again, trying to slow things down, trying to sort of reduce the pace of the game. It looked a little bit open at times. Karl, just to come to you, what did you make of those substitutes that Klopp made there around? Again, we were at a stage in the match where, as Jim has mentioned, things are a little bit more open than we would perhaps have liked. You're looking to try and regain some control. Didn't have huge numbers of options really there, but Keita and Elliott coming on for Oxlade and Thiago. Could you understand the logic there?
Yes, for Elliott, because Oxlade-Chamberlain worked hard, but you can see obviously there's an element of rustiness there. His first touch wasn't always great, and most of our build-up play came down the right-hand side anyway. So yes, for that one, that was fine. I think that was also, I felt like it was probably going to be us going to like the flat four in midfield that we have done quite a lot of time, and then just leave Salah and Nunez more central to go on the break. I was surprised to see Thiago go off, because I would have expected at that point it's much more about getting a little bit more control of the ball, maybe use possession a little bit better. Maybe Klopp felt that Thiago wasn't quite doing that well enough, perhaps. I think others at the time were probably not doing it to a greater extent than Thiago, but on the ball maybe he was a little bit loose second half. I don't think it was that much of a big deal, but in the end, I didn't actually think Naby Keita played very well at all once he came on. Again, you're looking at someone just back from injury, and first touch and the timing isn't there and all the rest of it, but there were a few very, very sloppy moments, very lax sort of on and off the ball things that he did. So the actual sub itself, again, like you've referred to, is only in hindsight whether it's a good or a bad one to do, but I was a little bit surprised Thiago went off before others, let's say.
Yeah, no, of course. Especially, sort of, given the fact that he didn't actually end up going to the World Cup. And as we sort of round things off here, on 75 minutes, Nunez again had a chance, or dragged it wide, found himself in lots of space. Another good run. Salah's great pass through to him. Again, we're really seeing sort of the impact his change of pace can have here. Drove into the penalty area, slipped a shot that rolled just wide of the far post as well. As we've mentioned, plenty of backseat commentary I was receiving at this stage. There he is again, etc., etc. But as we've all mentioned, constantly involved, never hiding, constantly sort of an irritation for the opposition. So I was just, again, reminding people of another Uruguayan who I'm not comparing in terms of talent level perhaps, but in terms of sort of ruthlessness in his first sort of season and a bit at Liverpool. I'm hoping that Nunez models that guy's development. On 79 minutes, we saw Henderson depart and Matchett come on, and we saw Trent depart and Gomez come on as well. Perhaps again just a bit of rotation here, keeping players fresh. As we sort of mentioned, any of those midfielders could have been replaced really in terms of how they were sort of retaining possession. And on 81 minutes, just a mere 2 minutes after sort of being introduced onto the pitch, we have a first Premier League goal for Stefan Matchett. To again a really important goal, sort of taking Liverpool to be 3-1 up. Nunez driving to the byline after a heavy touch, actually dug out a pretty good cross, sort of deflection, forced Olsen into sort of deflecting it, pushed it right into the middle of the penalty area, so not good goalkeeping. And Matchett, in a game where sort of we really saw lots and lots of examples of people lacking composure. Matchett sort of took a lovely sort of dummy at first when he took the touch, rounded the keeper, and then fired it sort of delightfully through Ming's legs as well for his first Premier League goal. Really important, as I mentioned, sort of trying to sort of Liverpool getting that third goal and actually sort of reasserting themselves in the game, sort of killing off Villa's hopes of getting anything more out of it. On 83rd minutes, Salah played a good pass again down to Robbo. A low shot at the near post was sort of deflected a little bit more awkward for Olsen than perhaps it first appeared. And Villa made some subs on 85 minutes. Coutinho coming on, Dodonka coming on, Danny Ings coming on. Sort of the last throw of the dice from Unai Emery. And Liverpool also, a couple of minutes later, also took off the constant narrative machine, Darwin Nunez, and replaced him with Ben Dirk, 17-year-old, came on for his Premier League debut. A nice little touch there. That was a sort of a late corner from Robbo on 90 minutes. 4 minutes of added time, but again, it wasn't too much action to report there as we round on to the final whistle. Jim, I'll just come to you first as we sort of wrap things up here a little bit. Lovely to see sort of Matchett sort of get that goal, really important goal in the context of the game, but also his first Premier League goal as well. He's been someone who's really impressed us in the cameos that we've seen because of his ability. What did you make of sort of the way in which sort of the game ended up finishing off?
I thought it was poetic justice, really, in some ways, that Nunez got, well, it wasn't technically an assist, but morally it was an assist for the goal. You know, that shit Andy Carroll you've just been singing about has just basically killed your game off for you.
The moral assist. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was, morally speaking. It was just what I just loved it. I just loved the way that he just had that. 80 minutes, we're in the lead, and he still gave it everything to get that ball and to get it back in. And that's the sort of craziness, as you both mentioned earlier on, that can win games. So even though he wasn't on the score sheet himself, he closed that game off for us. And then Matchett, what a young player. I mean, everyone who talks about him raves on about him, and you sometimes wonder if that's a bad thing at that age, because everyone's expecting him to be all of a sudden the standards of how good he is. The stories people tell about how good he is all get a bit of an exaggeration, takes on a life of its own, and before you know it, he's basically Messi before he's even started shaving properly. But that's not how I think Liverpool tend to be with young players, and it's good to see Klopp just hopefully bringing him in at the right pace, if you like, the right speed, the right frequency, bringing him on at the right time in the game, in the right situation. And I mean, the confidence that will give him to score that goal that killed that game off in that situation, and the composure he showed. I mean, I thought Van Dijk was composed with his attempt at goal. Well, the goal that he scored in the first half, but that young lad, I mean, that was so composed. That could have easily gone wrong. That could have easily flown over the bar or just hit a defender in the face or anything. He just placed it perfectly, and I think what we saw of him for the rest of the game, it really augurs well for what we've got there. Is if you like, the next generation that's going to come through, because that's what Liverpool will have to do for years to come. We're not going to have the money to keep buying the whole squad. We're not going to be able to keep spending 60 million to 160 million on every single position when we need someone to come in. We're going to have to find younger players, and thanks to Brexit, they're all going to have to be from the British Isles or something, I think, from now on. But we find them, and if we can find them and we can nurture them and we can make them good, that is the key to our future success. So it's, maybe I'm going a little bit over the top for what he did, but this is what we need to see more of. We need to see more of these young players coming through. The likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, another example of a player that, is underrated by everyone but us and makes such a difference to us. And I hope this is what we see with him. It felt like, as well, with those substitutions later on, that we kind of decided we weren't going to do the sitting back thing quite as much. and we started looking a little bit more interested. Because at times I thought the formation had almost even gone to sort of 4-5-1. That even Salah was really deep at times, and Nunez was the only one up front at times, and it did feel like we were really deep. But once we made those later subs, it did see not the final one, the two with as the game was coming to an end, that we thought, right, we can go and do it the other way now. We can go and put them under pressure, and that's what I think we did, and it paid off. And really, that was it. Game over. Nothing after that from Villa worried me anymore. My little spell of being worried lasted until that 80th minute or so.
Yeah, I'll admit, I think that was the point after the Matchett goal where I went to refill the drink that I had at that time. I think I was not prepared to do it before that happened.
Yeah, I was thirsty as well. Yeah, I was exactly the same thinking. I was going to get a drink, but no, I'm not moving.
Exactly, yeah. Not the electrolytes. I have to admit, I wasn't replacing it for any sort of physical exertion. But there was one little bit, actually, Karl, I'm bringing you in here to discuss the end of the game as well. And you can also give your thoughts on Matchett's goal and sort of his, maybe sort of how integral a player like him could be over the next few seasons. Lovely little moment there from Ben Doak, who made his cameo as well. It's his first Premier League start. Sort of continuing that Everton theme that we were discussing. Just completely did Luca Digne for sort of a lovely sort of Suarez-esque sort of role. Again, just before sort of the end of the game as well. What were your thoughts, Karl, on how the game ended up there? Again, crucial goal that Matchett scored just to relieve us of pressure of a late onslaught from Villa, especially after they'd made those 3 subs, looking to roll the dice. Again, it's a big 3 points.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mag boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, for Matchett in particular, I think is notable or worth mentioning at least that, he hasn't come on once the game is wrapped up. He was brought on along with Joe Gomez as part of the plan to sort of lock it down and make sure that we are doing things which we needed to do to see out the victory. So in the end, he has made it even more certain and even more settled and probably just about a more realistic look on the scoreline and the balance of chances. But he didn't just come on, like Ben Doak, it's great for him to come on in that, but he came on once the game was done. Stefan Bajcetic came on to make sure the game was done. So he is already taking these little steps forward to being involved and playing a role and having a part in the team in the match context of this is what we need to do now. This is part of the tactical plan for each phase of the game as such. So I did say about him actually after the mid-season warm-up friendly against Man City last week, as we'll keep referring to it as, he was overrun in midfield, right? And he had a fairly poor game in terms of his first touch and his pass and where he was in terms of closing down passing lanes and being taken on by people and all that sort of stuff. And I had to say in a written piece and to a few other people as well, and in fact on the Scouter podcast as well, I think, this is a kid who had made like one start for us before that day and was playing against 3 players around him who had played at the World Cup. You don't just make that step in your first couple of games. You don't get to that point without having a couple of these lessons handed to you early in your career. It's absolutely fine for him not to be as good as Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne. This is a long, long path that he's on now. as a teenager with Liverpool, and hopefully then to be, let's say, some sort of a squad player next season, and then maybe in the years to come, maybe these tough games that he has and shows him how far he's got to go, helps him to get to that level and shows him what level of effort he needs to improve on in training and all the rest of it. And today, you can see that importantly, he wasn't affected by it. He still maintains his own self-belief and confidence even before the goal. There's a couple of little fast touches around the corner, a really good switch of play over to Harvey Elliott on the other side, I think I remember. A couple of tackles that he made as well, or closing people off at least. So he's not affected by coming off at half time or having been bested by probably the best team in the world. Let's be fair, this season at least. So it's very, very comforting that one, he retains the belief in himself, and two, that Klopp and the coaches retain the belief in him. It's not going to change on account of this goal. He's not going to become a starter suddenly, and in exactly the same way that wasn't going to change after he was done up a little bit by Man City's midfield. It's all part of his journey and his learning, and I think he's shown that he's got very, very good technical ability very, very quickly as soon as he comes on. But importantly, he also shows that he does know how to play against general standard of Premier League players in terms of positional work and what he needs to do for the team tactical perspective and all the rest of it. Also, probably interesting. I think I'm right in saying that this was the first time he hadn't actually played the deepest role in midfield for us. Maybe when he came on, I don't know if it was Napoli, he came on as like a second centre mid effectively, but usually he's played when Fabinho hasn't. So this time coming on at the same time was a little bit of a different role, and obviously why he was able to get forward and score the goal in the end.
And you mentioned Fab there. I think it's just worth sort of bringing him up a little bit. I did see some commentary around. I think he's a player who's received quite a lot of criticism. I've seen it certainly online anyway over the past few months or so, and so you can have your opinion on sort of the reasons why maybe he's not been at his best. But I mean, what was your opinion on his performance tonight? I saw some sort of praise for him and actually for Henderson in parts as well.
I think Fabinho was much better today in terms of his defensive work, his protective work, his making challenges, his ability to move in different areas of the pitch. I think we still leave massive gaps on both sides of him, and that's a problem for us defensively as a team. I think that's where probably 60-70% of their chances on goal came from today, including the goal, which was, I know it's Matip who was obviously on Watkins in the first place, but it was no pressure on the ball at all for a deep cross from where it was. That was Thiago not getting out quickly enough, basically. It's been a constant theme for Liverpool this season. So Fabinho was rubbish, let's be perfectly honest, in the first 40% of the season, whatever we've played so far. But he was also left really, really exposed way too often by the system, by the personnel, by his own lack of what appeared to be sharpness or quickness about his game anyway. So today was definitely a good step forward, I think. There's more to come from him in terms of his passing and how he affects the play in our build-up, but I don't need that to all happen in one game. Maybe going away with Brazil, different change of scenario, different training, I don't know, whatever it is, but he did look more energetic to me today. He certainly was a bit more aggressive and accurate, I'll say, in his challenges and when to make them and the timing of them and that. So I think today was a positive thing for Fabinho.
And Jim, just as we look to sort of wrap up here as well, I was just looking at the table again. So Liverpool having played 15 games, a couple of teams ahead of us. Again, still a sort of a game in hand over a couple of them. Currently in 6th place in the league table, 25 points, just 1 point behind United, just 5 points off sort of 4th place Spurs. What are your thoughts on the game as a whole? Obviously, it's an important 3 points. Were there any players, just like me and Karl discussed Fabinho there, that you think are worth sort of discussing in a bit more detail? Obviously, Nunez, who we discussed at length at times today. Were there any other players who sort of caught your eye you think deserve some praise?
I think as a whole, I think you look at the sort of, it's not quite Jekyll and Hyde in the difference between the before and after Liverpool. I mean, we've had some absolute nightmares this season from, I'm trying, it's difficult to think of a player who hasn't had at least one nightmare game for us this season. And I didn't feel like we had any players that were having nightmares tonight, which, I don't know, it's a bit faint, that praise, isn't it? But I think it's good. It's a good sign. I think, Fabinho was closer to his old self, but he's not his old self. I think I was worried how Virgil might come back after that penalty miss, and how that he's not bothered, is he? He's come back and he's looking as good as we can expect him to be, because he is not as young as he was when we bought him, but it's not like he's an old man or anything.
And just on Virgil, Jim, actually,
Yeah.
you mentioned that. I just see some quotes coming in as well. I said, hopefully the injured players can come back soon, and hopefully we can welcome some new players at our football club. We will see. I think the quality is always welcome at Liverpool. So again, a couple winky eyes there. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of side-eye emojis, obviously, on Twitter, but
Yes.
it does appear that a couple of them, especially with some of the Klopp's comments as well, perhaps they know something we don't.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think, you can imagine sort of meetings at the club behind the scenes, with the higher ups and all the rest of it. And again, we talk about hindsight. We talk about hindsight within the game, but within a sort of transfer window, somebody at the back of the room would have been saying, we need to spend more money this summer and we need to strengthen in these positions. And someone else was saying, but maybe we don't. And then now they've gone, well, remember what we said in that meeting in the summer? And maybe hindsight's come along now and the checkbooks being found again, or whatever they use nowadays instead of checkbooks. Maybe we're going to put some hands in some pockets and find some cash and get some players in. We do need players to come back from injury. We've got players missing. That's something as well. I mean, have we got an answer to who our third forward is going to be for the time being? Probably not. I'm not sure. Are we going to play a different way to get round that? It's going to be interesting to see how that works out. What as well is, I mean, back onto our youngster who made a little, got his name on the score sheet again tonight, that these are the times when players like that get those chances. There's no way that Klopp would have brought him on if everybody was fit and he had a full squad with everybody in that he wanted. As much as he came on tonight and did exactly the job, an important sort of senior job, if you like, and he came on and did it, as Karl said, in other circumstances, he maybe wouldn't even have been on the bench because, Klopp wouldn't necessarily have risked him in that situation. But the fact is, he knew in that situation he was worth putting on and giving, he could trust him enough based on what he had around him. And he just, I always think back, I've used this so many times to Robbie Fowler being given a chance when Liverpool were having injuries. He got thrown on the pitch and he just didn't think twice. He took his chances with both hands, literally, and never looked back. And, maybe he was always destined to be a great player, but maybe in another universe, he didn't get those chances. And by the time he did, he went off the ball because, the step up from playing in the academy to playing in the first team is unreal. And as Karl says, maybe there's another step again to playing against Man City when you're playing against most of the Premier League teams. So these are all positive signs. There are some negatives to look at, but I think something we've said about Liverpool for years is that we make mistakes and we learn from them. And I think it's took us a while this season at times to learn from mistakes, but I do feel like the mistakes tonight were relatively few in number, relatively simplified. We can go through those and start looking at those and start fixing those things. It was good to see. One other thing as well about young players, it's just remember that Nunez is a young player who either come through our academy and was just breaking into the first team this year. We'd all be saying perhaps different things about him. I know the media definitely would, but that price tag makes a difference and raises expectations. But I don't think he's bothered, and I do think he will get better, and I do think he's going to be long-term an amazing player for us. And it looks good. I think before we did this podcast, I was doing other podcasts and I was thinking ahead to how this might work out. I wasn't bothered about the pre-season friendly the other day, but today was the important one. We had, before the World Cup, we had to go into it with a win. We didn't want a defeat hanging over us all that time, and we had to come back to a win. If we did both of those things, I felt we had a potential to close that gap in the league table. We're not going to win the league, of course. That's way out of our reach, but we need to get that gap from 6th to 4th close and then make that gap smaller and smaller and smaller above us and bigger beneath us, because we need the Champions League. But if you'd asked me to say 3 months ago where we're going to get it, I'd have been thinking maybe not. We can, but we've got to play like this at least as well as this every week, sometimes better, because we will face better teams than Villa. But we won. And, I'm happy with that. That's a positive. We won. 3 points. Lots to learn from. Lots to look forward to.
And to the plugs, Jim, what can the listeners expect to hear from you over the next sort of weeks or so?
Yeah, Jay and I, and hopefully Tony, if he's available as well, we're going to get some more scouts that Tommy's done. We're hoping to fit one in between Christmas and New Year. But how you say these things before Christmas, you make these promises, and then next thing So, this is not a promise, but we'll do our best. But in the meantime, we have got a couple, might be worth a listen. We have the one where we sort of looked ahead to this bit of the season, so you can maybe have a listen to that and laugh at all the bits we've probably got wrong. And we did our World Cup one where we kind of went through and picked our own choice of the best ever Liverpool player 11 from a World Cup. It's a bit of a, they didn't really come up with a good title for it, but every player had to have been playing for Liverpool, or be on Liverpool's books at the time they played in a World Cup. And some positions were well oversubscribed, and others were a bit thin on the ground. But yeah, it was good fun doing it. And if you do have a listen, give us a shout on Discord and maybe tell us where you would have changed things slightly. Maybe I just know there's someone we missed. I just know.
I like that very much. Yeah, there may be some stuff to come from me between now and the end of the year, but also here's some I made earlier. I do appreciate that. It is that time of the year. I'm seeing all sorts of channels. Here's some I made earlier. Karl, just to get your sort of final thoughts as well, wrap up some just another quote to react to. I'm just seeing some Klopp comments on the aforementioned Darwin. Darwin Núñez played an incredible game. He will score goals. I have no doubt about that. He gives us so much more than that. He will score. Everything will be fine. This game was exceptional. I mean, we're used to seeing Klopp staunchly defend any of his players, obviously, and I think he's probably not, he's aware of the comments. I think around Núñez. And again, I'm seeing actually just a post from Núñez as well. He's clearly active on social. We won on a difficult court, and we're going for more. Thanks, fans, for the support. To the rest, calm down. So again, he's aware of it as well. I think people are aware of it. What were your thoughts on the game? Any players you want to sort of focus on a little bit more, and also sort of remind the listeners what they can expect from you over the next week or so?
I mean, I find the word on Darwin Núñez just because I was having a quick look there and mentioning that it's the media and broadcasters and probably rival fans as well who are sort of picking at it and saying, he's maybe not scoring enough goals and all the rest of it. I've just had a quick look through the entire Big Six, let's say, from the Premier League plus Newcastle, who are obviously elbowing their way through into that now. So the top seven. The only players who have scored more than Núñez this season is Erling Haaland and Harry Kane. So get in the bin is all I can say with that sort of complaint about him not scoring enough goals, because glass houses and throwing stones and all that kind of stuff. Sort your own nonsense out about Chelsea's revolving cast of 17 different forwards who can only score 3 between them and that sort of thing before you worry about Darwin Núñez, who is, I'm just going to crown him the master of chaos, to be honest, and that's just what he is. I'm fine with that. Liverpool specific, this is the first time we've got 3 wins in a row in the Premier League this season, which is a good thing for now and a dismal thing considering it's Boxing Day, obviously, and we're 15 games into the season. Away from home, we actually now have a goal difference of 0. We're finally back to 0. That's lovely, isn't it? Closing the gap to the top 4 is the only thing which matters at the minute. So, like I said, Spurs drawing earlier on. We still have a game in hand, so we could go just 2 points off the top 4, which all of a sudden doesn't start to sound all that bad. And for any of our listeners who were not watching the earlier games, one of the games that I did watch was Leicester against Newcastle. Leicester obviously being the team we are playing next, and they were shocking. That's. I'll leave it there because that segues nicely into what I'll be doing for the rest of the week. I will be doing Scouted on the Leicester match, so tune into that in a few days. I think I'm on Raw for Leicester as well, and I don't know what written stuff I'll do yet because I've been trying not to think about work for the last 2 days.
Thank you very much, and there'll be, for myself, there'll be a rival week on ahead of the Leicester game as well. Getting back to the swing of things, I actually can't remember whether I'm on the Raw for that Leicester game, but I should probably find out quite quickly as well. But such is the way at this time of year where people become disorientated, just like defenders trying to mark Darwin Núñez as well. To all the listeners, thank you very much for tuning in, whenever you're tuning in, whether it's late on Boxing Day, whether it's sort of as you tuck into some sort of leftovers tomorrow morning as well. Do appreciate you sort of tuning in. The Reds are back and produced obviously sort of a satisfying 3-1 win over Aston Villa to sort of inch themselves a bit closer towards the top 4. And we'll be back again for another post-match Raw after the Leicester game on the 30th. But between now and then, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to replicate Trev's stay safe and stay well out there, but hope you have a wonderful time of year, and we'll be back again with another episode of post-match Raw just after that Leicester game on the 30th.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.